Greetings and welcome to In-Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. Actually, to round out this year's final conversation on the show, we have a banger. It's actually a woman who seems to prefer to work in the background and let her work speak for herself. But we are speaking with the Secretary in the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, Tashia Grace Burris. She joins us for review as well as possible ways forward in the division. Hello, Secretary. How are you doing? Thank you for making the time.
Hi, Dike, and thank you for having me. I just want to take the opportunity belatedly and certainly a happy and prosperous New Year 2023.
Yes, man. I want to ask, let me fasten your business a little bit now. What are some of the biggest differences that you would have seen in the division within this year? So like from the start to the end.
I think coming on board at the time that we did gave persons the opportunity to really become passionate again about the sector. Coming out of that COVID lockdown of 2 years, we walked into our division of persons who were, the spirits were dampened, people were demotivated, we didn't really have a clear way forward in terms of how Tobago was going to come out of the shadow of the pandemic and how we were going to recover as a division and as a sector as a whole. The new administration coming in and especially being made up of young people really breathed life, I think, into the THA. Certainly, I'm very passionate about the tourism sector. I'm passionate about my island. And I was able to infect persons here with that kind of passion. So we really were able to bring out the best in persons in terms of their creativity, in terms of their innovativeness. And it really showed in the kind of events that we were able to host this year and the quality of the events that we put on. So I'm really happy to say that we're in a good place in terms of being able to launch into 2023, piggybacking on the successes that we realized in 2022. And I'm excited to see what the team would put together this year.
And we are excited right along with you. But you speak about youth, you speak about infecting and possibly injecting some of that youth. And how does that look when you think about saying, okay, well, possibly we may need to change some of the models that are used to address tourism and seeing what may be best fit for purpose in Tobago? What has that conversation been like?
Well, there's always this pull and tug between what is traditional and what is new. And you would always have the purists. You would always have the persons who think that we should stick to what we know, stick to what has worked for us in the past. But the reality is that the tourism sector is a very, very dynamic one. And certainly after COVID, it has changed considerably. Before we were coming into the digital age and we were focusing more on creating and using digital platforms to be able to sell our tourism story. Tobago was just launching its new brand identity in terms of the Tobago Beyond, and then COVID happened. But now what you have come back into is a situation where we're no longer using print media in the way we used to before. We're no longer using traditional advertising and the traditional media channels, but everything has gone digital because now you have a society that is more tech savvy. We were all on lockdown for 2 years, so people had to learn now to rely on the internet, to rely on technology, their phones, their laptops to get things done. And most services that people thought could not have gone online had to go online as a result. So certainly the industry had to evolve. And because of that evolution, you may find that even the older ones are now even more amenable to suggestions that they may not have been able to wrap their heads around before COVID happened. So you would find even the older people are now more tech savvy in terms of things like WhatsApp and TikTok and Instagram and that kind of thing. So it really has opened up a lot of opportunities for us to utilize these platforms to target our markets in particular ways. Certainly, I think that what Tobago can benefit from is the fact that even though we were last to reopen as a destination, because we only began welcoming our international traffic again earlier this year, the reality is that we've had the opportunity to look at other territories and see what worked for them and what didn't work for them, and to see what we could tweak for our unique situation in Tobago to be able to now make a mark again, or to continue to show up big and loud as we know how to in Tobago. And I think that is working well for us so far.
And I like the fact that one, you spoke about the fact that, okay, well, there's stakeholders, tour operators, and two, just they're almost kind of in a common consensus that we can't just go back. But is there anything that is being put in place policy-wise, hand-holding for the individuals who are still kind of caught in the middle because you have this person who say, well, normally my grandchild is organizing on the video for me or pull this down for me to get the information. But especially since the rest of the world, this is just outside of Trinidad and Tobago, will say, okay, well, we're using these platforms in a manner that is a lot more formalized. Is that something that the division is taking into place as it moves forward with plans?
Well, the thing is that we've always had digitalization on our agenda. And certainly it has become now more in the forefront in the post-COVID era, because now we talk about this idea of a new normal. And even with the threat of another outbreak of the virus to happen, because we are monitoring the situation in China very closely, because certainly in December 2019, nobody would have thought that we would be in lockdown in March of 2020. So certainly in terms of planning and policy, that is happening as we speak. That is what is making me lose some sleep at this point, because certainly we cannot, we have to be prepared going into whatever happens in 2023, whether it be another outbreak of the virus, whether it be economic crisis, whether it be even natural disaster. Resilience in the sector is what we're focused on, and putting those plans in place. Now, we had a COVID task force that was instituted under the previous administration. They submitted reports as to how we could now reintegrate ourselves using some new systems, new policies, new techniques. That was never really actioned. So we will go back to that report to see what was recommended, and certainly to piggyback on some of what that work has already been done, and certainly look at what is happening in our other neighboring territories, places like Jamaica, places like Grenada, places like Barbados, how they are using technology to be able to build resilience in their sectors, and certainly getting the population accurate with what exactly is to happen. Because the reality is that online systems are here to stay. Technology will continue to be used, and we may have to resort to using technology even more if we have to protect persons. So it may not be that we lock down the country again, but it may be that we now have to utilize whatever technologies are available in a more strategic fashion in order to be able to, one, sell our products, still get people into the island safely, have them enjoy themselves and have them go back, and still ensure that we have some business continuity taking place even while everything is happening on our world stage. So what I see is that our people, in terms of Tobago people, we are open to the change. We are open to the situation evolving, and certainly they are open to the ideas that we have to really try and make life easier if it is that we do have to go the way of instituting some kind of measures to protect us from any situation that may arise in future.
And I really like that conversation, the idea about resiliency and how it is you're moving to ensure that. We take a short break, we come back with more. Stay with us. We are speaking with Tashia Grace Burris, the Secretary of, I like to say .cat, because then that gives me Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation. Stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We are speaking with the Secretary of the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transport, Tashia Grace Burris. And in terms of, we started off getting an idea of some of the changes that you felt within the year. But what are some of the biggest challenges that you are working towards and say, okay, well, these are things that we're earmarking to deal with right off the top of the table?
I tell you, one of the biggest challenges that we face in the sector of the back is really financing the kind of work that needs to be done in order to have us compete with the rest of the region and the rest of the world. The reality is that the kind of investments that are required in the tourism sector, our budgets don't allow for it. The subventions that we get from central government doesn't allow us to do all the things that we would want to do. So that even though we asked for what we thought was a very reasonable request in October for releases for this financial year, we did not get 100% of what we asked for. So now we have to reprioritize. The idea is, and I want people to put this in perspective, the budget that we have for our operating expenses for our tourism agency might just be the budget for one ad campaign or one marketing campaign in a territory like the Cayman Islands or Barbados or Jamaica or Grenada. And these are the people that we're competing against, because we're competing for the same tourists. They're coming from the same source markets, whether it be the US, whether it be the UK, whether it be the rest of the world. The Caribbean islands are competing against one another. And Tobago is a kind of small fish in a very big pond in other big fishes. And we are trying to see how we can differentiate ourselves and really stand out amongst the crowd. So part of the challenge of my job, I think, is to really see where we can utilize the limited financial resources we have to get most bang for the buck, and making investments that redound to huge benefits. So I will give you an example. The THA, we hosted our first inaugural carnival in October, which I must say was a resounding success, and especially on the economic front, because when you look at the investment that the THA made, which was in the region of about $13 million, because we're just finishing up the tabulating of the invoices and receipts. So we didn't spend the 17.5 million that we had initially allocated. It's closer to 13 million. So we made a $13 million investment to have this carnival in October, which traditionally is the beginning of our winter season. And we were coming back out into the space, last to open, now getting our international routes back up and running, still dealing with the fallout of COVID, still trying to jostle for some space in the atmosphere and in the hearts and minds of travelers. And we were able to get over 30,000 visitors to the island during that month of October, both a mixture of domestic and international visitors. And the estimated spend based on preliminary surveys that we did, conducted by CSO, was that average visitor spend was $10,000 TT per person. So you're talking about something like $300 million being directly injected back into the Tobago economy during that October period. So when you look at an investment of 13 million, that brings back $300 million in return, where we saw hotels filled, our car rentals were oversubscribed, our suppliers for tents, chairs, sound systems, lighting, because we had a number of events taking place on the island, were oversubscribed. We're talking about a win for our small businesses. And my mind now is on how do we replicate this success? How do we continue to get those kinds of visitor numbers with that kind of spend on a consistent basis? Because you're talking about an industry. If we can get one such of those types of events, which is bringing in about 30,000 people at any given time in Tobago once per month for 12 months, you're talking about $1.5 billion possibly going back in our tourism sector. And you see that would have wide-ranging ripple effects for us. And how do we, as I said, replicate that success? So for me, the biggest challenge is finding the right formula. It would be a mixture of events and festivals and other activities, attractions. What are our product offerings? Creating that robust link between the islands, in terms of air bridge and sea bridge, so that people can come when they want to come, ensuring that the hotels are ready to welcome visitors and they are up to scratch. That's why we still have our tourism upgrade grant program still going on, and hotel accommodation sector providers are still accessing those monies to be able to upgrade their properties, looking for new properties, because we have 3 possible developments on the cards carded to start in 2023, and also increasing the international airlift. So it's all part of that ecosystem. Sometimes it's a chicken and egg scenario with me, because I ask myself, what should come first? Should we fix first and then invite, or should we invite and fix while people are here? But the reality is that we're managing. We will continue to manage. And to be honest with you, at this stage, failure is not an option for me. So we will do what we have to. We will learn along the way. We will make some mistakes, but we will learn quickly. We will rebound, and we will do better. Yeah.
And it's natural to be making those mistakes, but it's very heartening to hear those kind of figures that you would have just shared. So thank you for that. And I think you always want to put your best foot forward when you're making that first step. But it's one thing to have people say, okay, well, it happened for the first time, and I was there the first time it happened. But I think part of what you're speaking about also kind of goes down to how it is sectors are regulated, how it is capacity is built. So that goes towards replicating with a certain level of quality that is consistent. And even looking at your own personal story, this is something that, in terms of building capacity, is something that you would be wanting to do on a consistent level. So how do you get that done and impress upon individuals that this is something that is needed, so that, one, you're able to give a better product now, and two, you also have yourself in a position when other things take place, you're able to capitalize on those opportunities, or you're able to create some of those opportunities?
So I'm glad that you asked that, because the reality is that my first year was very everything that you can about what is going on with you, both from an internal perspective with respect to the management of the division, because a secretary has a huge task on their shoulders. They're not just charged with the responsibility for managing the division and different portfolios, and I have at least 4 to manage, but you're also managing the industry and the sector. So it's all, there's the internal and the external as well. So that my first year was really to get to know the major players, get to know what's happening with the stakeholders, find out and get a sense of what's happening with the division and see where our own internal gaps exist. The reality is that we ourselves need some institutional internal strengthening, because we don't have key persons in positions to fill our middle management. So we have people at the very top, we have people at the very bottom, but we're missing some very critical elements within our internal structure to be able to steady the ship. And that requires a mixture of both experience and technical expertise and capabilities. And that's what we were actively looking for in the first half of next year. Because in order for us to be able to achieve some of the things we want to, we really need to have the best persons on board to lead the charge. The secretary can't do everything and they can't know everything. And the reality is that you're strong as the team that you surround yourself with. So for me, I think we have to surround ourselves with a core set of people who really can get the job done. That's one. The second thing is that in terms of standards and regulations, I've been preaching that from the day that I walked into this office. So I'm happy that you asked that, because the reality is that that's the only way that we could compete, standards and regulations. Because whereas Tobago still kind of has a laissez-faire, kind of relaxed attitude to a lot of things, the things that we get away with here or that are acceptable for our local consumption here would not fly in other territories. It would not fly in Grenada, it would not fly in Jamaica, it would not fly in Barbados. And the reality is that everybody has sun, and sea. Everybody has nice beaches. Everybody has nice nightlife. Everybody has nice attractions. But the thing that keeps people coming back to a destination is service. And that's what our people have to understand. And I could remember being in one of our, we had a launch recently for our industry service leaders, customer service training, where we're training the leaders in the industry to now impart that training onto their staff when they go back to their respective organizations. And the chief secretary did an address, and he spoke about the conundrum that we locals find ourselves in terms of, he says that Tobagonians, we are the most beautiful people. Come to our house Christmas time and harvest time, and you leave as family with your belly full, you're going with 2 plates and some sweet bread to go home and we live the experience. But when it comes to us coming to the job, we almost switch off that nice switch. And we have to find a way to keep that switch on. And we have to understand that service is not servitude. And that reculturing of the minds really has to take place at the level of the communities. And that's something that I intend to do in 2023. So that whereas in 2022, I was bogged down with a lot of meetings in the office, trying to map out things, trying to lead the charge, handhold, even the boards coming in with new directors, new chairmen, trying to steady the ship after COVID. In 2023, I'm excited to be on the field. I'm excited to actually go in the communities now and have the conversation with people. How do we look for the opportunities in chaos? Because there's always opportunity in any situation, regardless of what it may present to you. What are the opportunities that are available? And people have to start to look at the tourism industry more than just being a bellhop or a baggage handler or a housekeeper. There are so many other career paths that could come out of being in the tourism sector. It's not just about hotel work. Tobago presents so much opportunities with all the resources that we have, from the marine sector in terms of diving and reef tour operating, from retail in terms of getting our tradesmen, our leathercraft people, our seamstresses and tailors, our artisans, our creatives. All of these persons are part of that larger ecosystem. And people have to see where their strengths lie, where we could partner with other divisions to provide training, even creating digital content. That is a new area that we're actually exploring. I have a proposal that I'm looking at right now that would allow young people an opportunity to make money selling Tobago and advertising what we have here, utilizing their platforms. And all of these are opportunities.
And that is one of the things that I
on the
wanted to
horizon.
talk to you about, but we don't have the time to do it. But I really like that point. Service is not servitude. And fingers crossed, we speak a little more consistently in the new year. But thank you so much, Secretary Burris, giving us an idea of what is happening in the Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation Division. And we want to thank you on behalf of the entire TTT crew. This has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you so much for joining us.